Washington Post critic Desson Thompson called this movie subtly riotous. Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle noted, all in all, it's a misfire, but a misfire that's more interesting than a lot of successes. And Nick Rogers from the Film Yap said, in a subgenre littered with films worth forgetting, here's one that's good enough and smart enough. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Stuart Saves His Family.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters. Welcome to Ruined Childhoods. I am Dan.
I'm Jon.
We're the hosts. We like to talk about movies, and we like to speculate about whether there should be sequels, prequels, remakes, reboots, and adaptations, and board games, and VR experiences, and just different ways to take the movies we love and
scavenger hunts.
Give them
art galleries. I don't know.
Oh boy, you said scavenger hunt, and you know what movie I thought of immediately?
National Treasure?
No, because I'm me. Midnight Madness.
Oh, what's Midnight Madness?
Midnight Madness. So our Gen X listeners who watched a lot of HBO as kids are right now. Oh yeah. Midnight Madness was a movie about like a scavenger hunt, and it was like this like citywide scavenger hunt. A young Michael J. Fox appears. I want to say David Naughton is in it. Paul Rubens makes an appearance.
Interesting.
Yeah, I remember it being a really fun movie. It's kind of one of those cult hits, but I think just cult hits among people who have nostalgia for it from watching it, over and over again on HBO in the 80s. But yeah, Midnight. Anyway, you said scavenger hunt. I thought Midnight Madness, but yes, National Treasure as well.
Hey Dan, with your permission, I'd like to plug a couple of things. Is that okay?
Plug away.
Okay, so for anybody who is maybe new, or maybe you just haven't heard me talk about this, I work for an organization that is cinema-centric. It's called Pam Cut, Portland Art Museum Center for an Untold Tomorrow. And what we do is a lot of film screenings, experiential film screenings, some exhibition-type work that's local here to Portland. We also have some things that are not exclusive to Portland. We have, an educational component to what we do that we call the co-laboratory. And aside from the in-person stuff that we have a few virtual offerings that I wanted to talk about real quick. We have one, and Dan, I think that you might actually really like this one. It's called The Gooey 80s, and it's all about, I know, right? And it's all about practical effects and like body horror films, and it's not like a how they were made kind of thing, but it's more of like a what was the significance of them kind of thing. And like what did they really mean? Like what were they really speaking to about what was going on in the world during that time? So it's a really fascinating look at those, David Cronenberg movies and, all those kind of like body morphing movies. So that's over the course of 3 Saturdays towards the end of June. So definitely, I think it starts June 14th, if that's that Monday. That's that Saturday. Anyway, it's on pamcut.org, as well as another virtual class. And this one's just one session, but it's all about the art of poster design. And it's actually taught by a major poster designer whose work people have probably seen. The instructor for that, her name is Akiko. She's amazing. She does some incredible artwork. She actually, I don't know if it's still going on, but in New York had or has a gallery show at Posteritati, which is a movie poster art gallery, and they sell, really nice, like limited edition prints of movie posters, really deluxe stuff. So those are a couple of virtual classes that I just wanted to promote really quick because they're coming up, and I think that they'd be really fun for anybody who's looking to learn a little bit, expand their knowledge about what's going on in the world of cinema, maybe something that's new or something that's from the gooey 80s.
That sounds awesome, John. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
As I'm listening to this, I'm wondering, so Portland Art Museum, you're of course referring to Portland, Oregon.
Correct.
What type of, there's a Portland, Maine.
Yeah.
I imagine they have an art museum.
The Portland Museum of Art.
Oh.
And what's really funny is sometimes I'll be at the museum and somebody will be like, where can I find this exhibition on German, whatever? And I'm just like, you'll find that in Maine because that's at the Portland Museum of Art in Portland, Maine. So if you walk this way and don't stop for about, half a year, you'll finally get there.
I imagine like a monthly, meeting of representatives in the middle of the country just to exchange like the mail. Oh yeah. You got okay. Yeah. So that went to you.
I feel like there's also like a Portland, Texas, like, a much smaller, less like metropolitan situation. But I think that there's, a couple of other Portlands here and there throughout the country.
I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon those are the big ones. Those are the ones on the map.
Yeah, representing the Northeast on the map.
Every city is on a map, clearly. I mean, unless it's like a lost city or like something from Indiana Jones, in which case it's on some type of map that he has to find, or like National Treasure. So
that makes me think of Scavenger Hunts, Dan.
Scavenger Hunts. Oh, you know what movie that makes me think of? Midnight Madness.
Oh, I just heard about that movie. It's so weird.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, people know young Michael J. Fox. Okay.
So
let's
before
move
we fully dip in to our movie of the week, Stuart Saves His Family, because we are talking in the months of May and June, we're talking about family movies, Father's Day, Mother's Day are happening, but let's just kind of open it up the whole families. And I wanted to first, before we get into actually talking about the movie, share a very special pour one out to an actor that is in Stuart Saves His Family who just passed away. You would know him if you watched Wayne's World. A lot of these like Lorne Michaels, 90s productions.
Mike Haggerty, who did pass away recently. You know him. He's got like the
mustache. He's a
really
Chicago
big
guy.
Face and Chicago.
Yeah.
He's either a cop or like in Wayne's World, he's the guy who's at the counter talking to Ed O'Neill about like losing his job.
Yeah.
And Ed O'Neill's like, yeah, you know what? I would go and I'd stab the guy. And he's like,
I got one of those once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, but Mike, and it made me think of other movies set in Chicago, mainly cop movies, because I feel like police movies set in Chicago, there's always a couple of actors that you always see, like they're in The Fugitive. They're like the two main cops in The Fugitive. The suspect's name is Dr. Richard Kimmel. Now we all hate this piece of shit, so let's get like that guy. and then there's the Chicago comedy like players who are in all of these, especially the SNL ones.
Dan, something that I was just thinking about recently is how we grew up in New Jersey, but because of Saturday Night Live and like the comedy scene that Saturday Night Live brought into the world, I feel like the idea of comedy that we were informed about we didn't realize how Chicago centric it was. And we were being fed all of these sketches about Chicago guys. And it was just like, I don't know, like it seems so universal, but it's like, no, those guys in that bar only like Chicago teams, and they speak in a very specific way that's only funny because it's a very Chicago way of speaking.
Right,
and,
right.
You know, you just have
yeah. I feel like SNL has done that to, you know, it's the cities with the fun accents. Because I know they did with Boston, like Jimmy Fallon back in the day, like when they would do a sketch and the Boston, they'd be talking about the Sox, go Sox, no ma, yeah, no ma. Noma's gonna hit a homer. And
yeah, that's actually that's interesting. And I know that was it Anna Gasteyer who's from Boston, or I don't know. Rachel Dratch. Rachel Dratch is from Boston area, and I know that like she brought a lot of like Boston into SNL during that time.
Yes, she's in the sketch with him.
Exactly,
with Jimmy Fallon. Yeah.
So it's really interesting how it's like these comedians, these sketch comics, really bring these elements of their hometowns to SNL, which kind of like boosts it around and kind of makes it feel like it's part of everybody's experience. Because I don't know, there's something, and especially because in the 90s, there were all of these SNL movies that were coming out, you know, aside from Stuart Saves His Family, which takes place in Chicago and, you know, in the Midwest.
Right.
But when he's in the city, that's Chicago.
Well, and we'll come back. I want to, of course, we're going to come back to Stuart Saves His Family.
I'm curious to know where It's Pat took place, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Chicago. You have Wayne's World, which took place near Chicago. So there's just a lot of like Chicago. I don't know where Coneheads, I can't remember where Coneheads took place.
Jersey.
Was it in Jersey?
Yeah. Coneheads, they live in Jersey. I'm looking to see where It's Pat filmed. Not the, yeah, I mean, no, of course it filmed in Los Angeles. But what was I going to say? It's also, these are cities that have these big comedy scenes. Now, of course, there's New York and LA comedy, but especially in the 90s, like the Boston comedy scene, like comics coming out of Boston, where it was like, if you were a comic from Boston and you got on like TV, you did like a late night show, you got a sitcom.
Right.
So like Boston was big, and Chicago, of course, is second city. And a lot of the, you know, that's where all of the Toronto comedians, because that's really the other, that's like, I feel like, I feel like Chicago is where like the Toronto comics enter America. They get in through Chicago, and get into that scene, because that's where, you know, like Aykroyd was, but also you have Belushi there because he was from Chicago. It's like, if you're Midwestern, that's where you gravitate. Farley.
Well, the entire Murray family, blasted us with the Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. So there are these little like comedy oases in the Midwest, Chicago, and then, you know, in the Northeast for Boston. And, you know, I'm sure there are Philly, like I'm sure SNL could do that, like a similar type sketch for a city like Philly. And they probably have, and I might not have seen it, but like a city that has a very, I mean, and most all cities have like a distinct character, but like with a lot of energy. Like, I don't know if a Seattle sketch would be very laconic.
Well, I mean, and who's to say where the next batch of, you know, sketch comedy people are going to be coming from? It's interesting. And, you know, just to kind of bring things to the movie that we're talking about this week, you know, Al Franken, born in New York, grew up in Minnesota. So which is where the
Smalley family lives.
Which is where the Smalley family lives. Also where Al Franken would go on to, you know, plant his flag in the Senate, albeit a little abrupt. We can get into that if you want.
I don't think we need to talk about Al Franken's about the end of. We don't need to talk about Al Franken's political career.
No, the only thing I will say is he did the right thing after doing a wrong thing.
Yeah,
that's all I will say about it.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
At this during this time in the 90s when he was working in comedy and created this character of Stuart Smalley. This is a sketch that is so weird and specific, and it's kind of incredible that it got turned into a movie. I think that was just part of the experimentation of the whole SNL movie movement of the era.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one. It makes me think, like, especially when, like, for years, especially after Wayne's World was a hit, they were like, oh, Sprockets, like this. They were talking about the Sprockets movie like into the 2000s.
Well, I just heard an interview with Mike Myers where he was saying that that's a character he still wants to bring back and still think he could bring back Dieter. Which is so good.
I wonder if I think Mike Myers should make a show that are just all of his characters, because he plays like 8 characters in his new show. So why can't he?
Which I want to talk about for a second.
Oh, okay.
Because I watched it and I feel like that is a perfect example of what we do on this podcast, because that show is exactly what we would have probably suggested had we covered So I Married an Axe Murderer, which one of my favorite movies. I love it. It's a comfort movie for me. And that show comes out of the movie So I Married an Axe Murderer. There's a scene where you're looking at me like you don't know this.
I don't know this.
Okay, Dan, if you remember the scene where younger Mike Myers is with Anthony LaPaglia and he takes him to have dinner with his parents, and his father, Stuart, I believe. No, Stuart is the son. No. Stuart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. So, he plays the Scottish father, and he and the mother, Brenda Fricker, are conspiracy theorists. They read the Weekly World News, and his father, especially, also played by Mike Myers, is a big conspiracy theorist, and he's talking about the Pentaveret. He mentions Colonel Sanders and his beady little eyes. And and so the Pentaveret is what this new show is on Netflix. And it references the Colonel and, as being part of it. And it's, I enjoyed the Pentaveret for just what it was. And I think that you just need to really know all of those weird Mike Myers-isms that, just like let it happen. There were some moments that made me like really laugh hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a particular fan of, when having to leave somewhere, saying like, I'm going to go like make like a tree or whatever. I just think that's fun. And he does this one as one of his characters. It just said, I'm going to make like a baby and head out. And I've lost it.
Have you not heard that one before?
I've never heard that one before.
Oh,
but the way he said it was so good. Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a show that's of this era. A lot of, the conspiracy theory stuff has just really gone off into a whole other direction.
Yeah.
So that's all certainly addressed. But anyway, let's go back to Al Franken a little bit.
So Al Franken, he this sketch on SNL where he played Stuart Smalley, who a self-help advocate and new agey recovery.
I'd call him a self-help addict.
A self-help addict, yeah. And which they do call him that in the movie. They call him a 12-step addict.
Yeah, I think you're addicted to 12-step programs.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that because it does lead to some fun moments in the movie. So it's interesting because I want to get into and I want to hit the synopsis and then kind of get into some of this. But what's interesting is it's one of the reasons, one of the things that makes this movie really tricky is it's kind of not clear if he's making fun of it or if he's I've come to the conclusion that I think he's making fun of like some of the people, but that he's actually, and I think this movie does an excellent job of it, showing that like this stuff works for people who are open to it and for people who really want to make progress.
Yeah.
It works. And we'll talk about it a little bit more after the synopsis, but I think the movie really does an excellent job of it. But the big challenge of the movie is that I think for this movie to work for you, you have to accept Stuart Smalley as a real person, because this movie is very much about real people, and it is, I think, meant to connect on this is not like Coneheads where you can where you really just turn everything off and chuckle
and listen to Soul to Squeeze by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh my God, yes, that's right. I'm picturing the exact scene. Was it Farley and they're like in the car? Or...
A movie where Chris Farley is kind of just a normal guy.
He's what a weird choice. Romantic. He's like the high school love interest in it, but it's wonderful. He's wonderful in it.
Oh, he's great. All right, so you want me to synopse this?
Synopse that.
I'm going to synopse this. After losing his local access self-help talk show, 12-step program addict Stuart Smalley is notified that his beloved Aunt Paula has passed away, encouraging him to return to his hometown and dysfunctional family. After a bit of funeral-centric family drama, the issue arises concerning Aunt Paula's house, which now belongs to Stuart's family. Intending to sell the house and split up the money, the one wrinkle that gets in the way of the Smalley family is an easement on the property, as a few feet of the house overlap on the neighbor's property. As Stuart tries to help with the situation, he only ends up making it worse for his family, resulting in them asking him to lie in court, saying that a conversation that he had with the neighbor never happened. Unable to tell a lie, the rest of the family is outraged, further fueling his father and brother's alcoholism. It all comes to a climax when Stuart's father accidentally shoots Stuart's brother on a hunting trip, leading to a family intervention. Meanwhile, Stuart's best friend, / one of his many 12-step sponsors, gets a lead about a television station she works with looking for a show like Stuart's. As he attempts to land the gig, he ends up having to steal a tape of his show from his disgruntled ex-employer's office in order to make a copy. And even though he comes clean, he's able to get his show back and get paid for it all the while. And in the end, he's good enough, he's smart enough, and doggone it, people like him. So, as we mentioned before, Al Franken plays Stuart Smalley. Vincent D'Onofrio plays his brother Donnie. We also have Leslie Boone as his sister Jody. We have Shirley Knight as Stuart's mother. We have Harris Yulin as his father. Laura San Giacomo as Julia, his best friend and 12-step sponsor. We have, in little bit parts from Julia Sweeney as his former boss's assistant turned former assistant. And then Joe Flaherty as a cousin in the family who starts some shit.
And Robin Duke is his wife.
Of course. So this movie is definitely, you raised an interesting point about it being pro 12-step program, pro therapy in a very weird way. And I think that those things come through mostly with Laura San Giacomo's character, when she opens up about her experiences with her own family. And when it comes out of a voice like hers in a very earnest way, you definitely get the sense, as you were alluding to before, that it is implying that therapy and 12-step programs work for people who it's meant to work for. And, but yeah, when it's Stuart who has this, it's never actually disclosed to my knowledge what his sexual orientation is. His father refers to him as Liberace at one point, but he definitely has an effeminate way about him and tone to his voice, but it's never actually established. There's no romantic aspect to this movie. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting choice. It is probably a very intentional choice.
I think it was very much, that's like very much of the time, like late 80s when he started doing this character on SNL. I mean, I don't know how long it was around before that, but it definitely goes. It's interesting. It reminds me slightly of a character that Sacha Baron Cohen did on his Showtime show, Who is America? And it's the character of a very liberal, woke man who, you know, he wears his like NPR cap and is very intentional about pronouns and things like that. And it reminds me of that character where it's like this is not like, the things that he is doing are very good, but the way he goes about it is a little much.
Right. Yes.
So there's a really interesting balance of comedy and drama where sometimes it mixes very well. Like, I thought the moment where Laura San Giacomo as Julia, she's triggered in they're at the 4th of July fireworks and Stuart is declaring independence, and Julia, she has such this moment, Laura San Giacomo, and I haven't seen this movie in a long time, and just knowing more now and being more attuned to when people have trauma, what are the signs that they're being triggered. And Laura San Giacomo, when she has that moment where she pulls back and from Stuart, and it's great because she's really the strength. She's his backbone. Yeah. And I think that what they do nicely is all of the sponsors, which it's so funny when the first time you see all of the sponsors meeting up in front of Stuart's apartment and they're all introducing them. Yes, I'm his Children of Alcoholics sponsor. I'm his Gamblers Anonymous sponsor. So I think it was so funny when they meet up, but they all seem to have it together. Like, they all seem like the people who, like, this has worked for. That's why I guess they're his sponsor.
Yeah.
And he's not anyone's
They all seem
sponsor.
like they're grounded in reality.
Yes.
Yeah. And he is just this strange character. So, Dan, there's a few things that I wanted to focus on. You know, you were talking about Laura San Giacomo's performance and, you know, her character. I want to give a major shout out to Vincent D'Onofrio, which
of
I
course.
think that aside from like Adventures in Babysitting or something, this was probably like my introduction to Vincent D'Onofrio, because I watched this movie a ton as a kid. It was on HBO or Comedy Central or whatever.
I had it taped.
You had it taped. I mean, I'm sure I watched it all sorts of different ways, but Vincent D'Onofrio, I remember his character so well. And what I really love about it is that despite being completely different from his brother, he loves his brother. Like, they have an amazing relationship. And when things go awry, you can understand why he's pulling away from him and drifting more towards their father. And it's his performance is just so brilliant in that way. And it's so funny to think about any performance in a movie like this as being like so impactful. But, you know, this movie really hits its dramatic notes hard. And, you know, the whole alcoholism aspect of everything. And Dan, there is an aspect that I do want to talk to you about that relates to another movie from this era. Now, Dan, this movie has a connection to a movie that came out the following year that's one of our favorite movies. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
So a 1996 movie.
Yes.
That would be one of our favorites.
One of our favorite movies and also television series.
Wait, the movie and the television series?
Well, we are quite fond of the television series, and we've gone on record over and over again talking about it.
Oh, geez.
Takes place in the Midwest.
Shit. I'm drawing such a, nothing that's coming to my mind is right.
You're going to be so embarrassed when I say the word Fargo.
Oh, Fargo. Shit. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I wasn't. Oh, are you talking?
What?
I did think of Fargo while I was watching this because of where they are when Donnie gets shot.
Yes. The father shoots Donnie near Brainerd, which is where everything happens in Fargo.
Yes.
So as soon as he said Brainerd, I was like, oh my God, I've only heard of Brainerd in one other place. And it's so funny that both of them include shootings and
I thought of that as well. Something else I want to jump into in terms of the dramatic part. There's some scenes that I think really work well, and I kind of wish that we had the input of somebody who had gone through recovery and counseling to talk about this movie, because what I'm saying, well, to me, this seems like it's a really insightful part, but that's just my impression. But when, so first, all the flashbacks, that show the trauma and
the emotional abuse.
They show that he's being picked on, but the one that I want to talk about is actually the one where he talks about, hey, sometimes my dad was this really great guy. Yeah. And I think I feel like they kind of hit the nail on the head in saying, like, yes, that's that, when you're in an abusive relationship, you will go and think of the good things and say, oh yeah. And it's such a great scene. They lose the mean neighbor who's also in all of those 90s comedy movies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He takes the football from the kids. And when Harris Yulin when he gets home from work and they tell him, he marches over there to get the ball. The kids are following him. He walks into this guy's workshop and says, "Why don't you pick on somebody with pubic hair?"
Yeah.
In terms of commitment to character, and I have the note about Vincent D'Onofrio as well. Harris Yulin. Really?
Okay. Harris Yulin is amazing in this movie. And I gotta say, nobody wears a comically small necktie like Harris Yulin, who in that scene, I don't know what his job is supposed to be, but he wears this uniform that involves a necktie that's, I feel like, just he's short. It's like a three-quarter length tie.
Like the
he
Maytag
looks like a Maytag
repairman. Yeah.
He's wearing a tie that's slightly too small. It's ridiculous. And then there's another scene, maybe it's when they're at the funeral for Aunt Paula, and his tie is just so little, and it just works so well for Harris Yulin.
And the character as well.
Well, yeah.
So I thought, and they also, and Stuart does make the point that he's like, oh yeah, but then this happened, and we were reminded that he's an alcoholic. The scene where they are talking about the intervention.
Yeah.
Where they're planning the intervention, and this scene is played so for real about what each member of the family is willing to do. Are they willing to basically cut off their relationship with the father if he doesn't stop drinking? And Shirley Knight, I think, has an awesome... is really awesome in this scene. And she has a lot of great moments where you see her before this scene when she really goes off on Stuart, when Stuart comes back after Donnie's been shot and he's like, "Hey mom, I bet you're cooking up a storm." Yeah. This is also after they've all read excerpts from his journal where he talks shit about all
Donnie of them. Copied. Yeah.
Yeah. So and she's like, you think I'm cooking and cleaning all the time and you think I'm having the time of my life. It is not fun. And she really gets in his face. She's like, it is not fun. You see how miserable she is, but also how wives were so expected to fill that specific role, wives of that generation.
Yeah.
You know, and it was so like, no, this is what you have to do. It doesn't matter if it's fun. So I like that the script also puts that. Stuart,
I do want to acknowledge though that at the beginning she is cooking up a storm for Aunt Paula's funeral reception, and indicates that, you know, it's like, she's like, well, always, like I always say, better to have too much and all that kind of stuff. And so it's, you know, it seems like it's her way of coping. And, you know, it's kind of maybe just her way of burying the you know, the feelings that she's having. And now that things have opened up with their family and like have kind of cracked open, she is feeling comfortable and free to say what she has to say that she hasn't been able to do before.
Well, and I think it's also like, you know, making a lot of food for Aunt Paula, who died of presumably natural causes, versus, you know, your son has been shot by your husband.
Yeah.
So
I also want to acknowledge something, Dan, you know, for anybody who is new to the show, Dan and I are brothers. We grew up in the same household, and we are very fortunate in that we did not grow up in a situation like this at all.
No.
There's not a problem with alcohol, and we are very fortunate in that way. And that is not the situation for a lot of people. And I just want to acknowledge that, you know, we're talking about this fictional family that's having this problem, but I don't want to make anybody think that we are speaking to this from a place, you know, of experience. You know, the only way that we can lend our thoughts is from what, you know, we've seen and what this movie is showing us. So it's not coming from personal experience.
No. But we are both, I would say, you know, have educated ourselves and have sought out to, you know, learn from the experiences of others. So it comes from a place of empathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Yeah, but certainly not experience. And also it's again coming back to what makes this movie so challenging. To and I like this movie. I really like this movie.
Well, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is who directed this. It's a Harold Ramis movie.
Yeah, yes, and that's where I was. That's what I was thinking is, yeah, Harold Ramis directed this. I don't think it would have been made if Harold. Apparently, like that was Al Franken was like, this is Harold Ramis will direct it, or it's not going to happen.
Oh,
so Harold Ramis really. It took on a challenge with this movie because, like I said, you have this absurd character, like characterization of Stuart Smalley interacting and showing the effects of these, you know, very serious things. So I imagine this movie was kind of doomed to begin with because it takes, I don't think most movie-going audiences are going to walk in and see that. And, you know, it's like, I think they want all or nothing. They don't want to go see an SNL movie and end up seeing, you know, Clean and Sober.
Right. Yeah. It's too bad that this movie was never going to really succeed. I think it did better than It's Pat, for what it's worth. It's Pat the movie. But probably only by a slim margin, and probably only because of Harold Ramis. And I want to say that it's like Harold Ramis that made this movie work, that put in those elements that seem like, you know, just nothing moments, but that come back later. You know, all of those elements that just make movies tend to work. And, you know, when you're looking at Harold Ramis's filmography, this is right in between Groundhog Day and Multiplicity. which we've talked about on this show, both of those. And so, you know, I feel like coming off of Groundhog Day, especially, I wonder how this movie impacted Harold Ramis with its lack of success compared to Groundhog Day. You know, we were talking about two movies that have a very different lasting impression. Groundhog Day is talked about at least once a year, if not more, by like everybody. And Stuart Saves His Family is talked about two dudes on a podcast, and probably not too many other people. It's not easy to find. You know, I had to rent it online, and I imagine that our rentals of this movie were probably the first in a while for this one.
Yeah, no, I actually got a thank you card from Al Franken.
Yeah. It just said, "Really? All right.
Yeah.
Thanks."
He's like, I got this notification. I don't know. I'm sure. Yeah.
But you know, like I said, this is one that played a lot. I'm sure that it was like really cheap for HBO or Comedy Central or whatever to be able to show. And I'm grateful for it, because there were a lot of moments watching it where it's like, I remembered every detail from the scenes, and I haven't seen it since I was a kid. And there's moments. So like, one of the funny things that's going on is Stuart, you know, in Chicago is a waiter, and Julia, Laura San Giacomo's character, you know, comes to eat there, and he has these conversations with her. And then anytime someone's looking, he like pretends to be doing his waiter thing. And the way that he's like pretending to talk about gazpacho sticks out in my head big time. There's so many Vincent D'Onofrio lines that stick out for me.
So the ones, and so I wanted to ask you, because there's definitely a few that I actually quote regularly and like weave into conversation.
Oh, like what?
I'm shooting all over myself.
I'm shooting all over myself is a really good one.
I mean, I swear, like, since I saw this movie for the first time, that has been one that I've used and adapted. And like, you know, I've done it in advice with like kids. If they're coming to me just like, oh, I should have done this, I said, look, there's no point in shooting all over yourself.
Yeah.
So I've used that from one of the restaurant scenes, and we've talked about this actor before, Garrett Graham. Yeah. Who has what I love it. He's this just a really frustrated patron, and Stuart is taking his order and just being awful. And he's got a follow-up question for everything the guy orders. And when he orders salad, and he's like, and I want the creamy ranch dressing, and Stuart goes, on the side. And he goes, on the salad.
Yeah. There's also some lines that like I didn't pick up on when I was a kid, because I was a kid. So there's the moment where he is doing his show, and he goes, but today I've decided to take a risk and wear a new sweater. It was sent to me by a recovering sex addict, Melissa D, who knitted it herself. She said it gave her something to do with her hands. So I love that one. I love the line in this one. I didn't really get when I was a kid, but it was in the narration. My father grew up in the Great Depression. His mother's.
Yes. Yeah. I always liked that one. I liked, there's the scene like the first night when he's staying in Donnie's room, and he has to move, and just hearing the way he says bong when he has to move Donnie's bong. Yeah. Donnie, can I move your bong?
Yeah, it's great. You know, and then there's just certain moments like when he's remembering to the past about their trip to LA, and when his father was, you know, got drunk and woke up too late and promised the daughter that he'd take her to get a picture in front of the Hollywood sign, and all that kind of stuff happened. Yeah. And so that scene just like totally sticks in my mind. The Sir Cleans a lot bit, you know, sticks out for me. Whoever played the kid version of him was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
And it's sad, those scenes, and the mom's like, oh, well, I don't want you to be disappointed when you lose.
Oh, totally. She's awful.
Yeah. I wonder how many people saw this, or if they saw it, would would really identify, would look at that and say, my God, yeah,
I think that this movie is more relatable and more like poignant than it should be, as being a comedy with this eccentric character at the center. And my question, and this is leading into where I would want to take this, is just like, does this movie need to be rewritten just as a drama and, take Stuart Smalley out of it, remove that with, and you know what, maybe it is replaced with a character who is at the center of some sort of self-help type of situation and not play it for comedy. Maybe they are the kind of person who, is a television do-gooder, coaches people and everything, but his personal home life, his upbringing is just a disaster. And that's kind of where I would want this to go, because I feel like, if there was any comedic angle to play this at, I feel like it would be inappropriate. Like, it wouldn't feel right. I mean, there's certainly a part of me that would want to see Stuart Smalley as a gambling addict and, hitting the tables and getting out of control and all that kind of stuff. But like, ultimately, do I really want to see that? The idea of it cracks me up a little bit, but like,
you'd want to see it as an SNL sketch, but not as a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and an SNL sketch in the late 80s or early 90s.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and I can't think of any titles, but just the idea of that, like that type of movie, the the professional, the one who moved away, who went to this, they're this big, and then their own, like, they're this expert, and kind of Frasier. I mean,
yes,
not. I mean, I think there are other things that are closer to it, but
right. And as much as I love Frasier, that is a show that plays up therapy as a punchline way more than it should.
More than Stuart.
What's that?
More than Stuart Saves His Family.
Yeah.
Does.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I wonder, I agree with you. I definitely think this is a story that it's important for these stories to be told. It's also important for them to not have a cartoonish sketch comedy character at the center of it.
Yeah.
Even though I went into this knowing who, like, the Stuart Smalley bit and everything. So I guess it was just easier for me to swallow. And also just on this last viewing, having more insight into like watching other characters and focusing on other things, just as a more mature viewer.
Yeah.
Caught a lot more. And yeah, I don't see any call for remaking this. I mean, and Al Franken certainly could reassume the Stuart Smalley persona at some point, and could probably tone it down since it's been so many years. But I wouldn't want to see that in as a film. I think a Stuart Smalley podcast could work.
Yeah.
I mean, visually it's funny, but I don't think you need the visuals. And I wouldn't want it to be, I actually think it would be interesting if it was Stuart Smalley interviewing mental health professionals and people who can speak to that, like who can get information out there. Yeah. So a Stuart Smalley podcast that is geared towards, and I feel like your producers, your co-creators would really need to focus on this, but appealing to people who either have been in treatment, are in treatment, or should be in treatment, and focus the humor on that.
Yeah.
And, I don't think another character should play Stuart Smalley, so it's kind of like, if Al Franken couldn't do it, then let's just make sure that we get some, podcasts out there, because those are, free sources of information for people, and, like people who might not go for help because they don't think they have a problem, or they're afraid of what they're going to lose if they seek help. Like Donnie would lose his only friend.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose that if there was another angle that I would approach this at, it would be Donnie centric, and maybe have some sort of Vincent D'Onofrio thing where he reprises the character of Donnie, but it's separated from the Smalley of it all. And, it is this person who's, moved on from their life, who is, at this point, 30 years, almost 30 years sober. And presumably, yeah.
We don't know. We really see, I mean, we don't get a resolution for the Smalley family, really.
What we get is that Stuart gets his show. Everybody loves it. And then we have Donnie come to visit him, and it ends with a big hug with them, and he's introducing him to Julia. And, it's like a really nice moment. And we can only assume, based on what we're given, that the relationship between Stuart and Donnie is strong, and that is the real core of his family, is, his relationship with his brother.
Right. But it's interesting to note that a movie like this, which is already kind of bucking a lot of trends and expectations, doesn't have, and the dad doesn't go to rehab at the end.
I think the last thing that we see him do is just storm off out of the intervention.
He says, if this is what rehab is like, send me to jail.
Yeah.
And we know the sister is a single mom and has had a string of just awful husbands. And
Stuart gave her his share of the money from the sale of the house and Paula's house to help out with her son.
What's interesting, though, is that the positive resolution for the family, at least for the kids in this family, is independence from the parents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is not a movie where we end with like, yeah, we drive ourselves crazy, but we're family. We're not hoisting the Coronas at the end in the backyard.
Family.
Yeah, family.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really fascinating movie. It can be watched and, for a good time. I'm sure it could be triggering for a lot of people who have had experiences with alcoholism in their family. And, or maybe it's the kind of thing where it's like, there's something about the relatability of it and the way that there is, it's not played purely for comedy. It is played for, sincerity.
And I think I actually did see some comments. I was looking on Letterboxd at different user reviews, and I did see a couple of posts, people who who are counselors and who show it, or
really
people who appreciate it for that. I mean, again, not for everyone, but I'm trying to think of all the other terms are coming back to my head. Stinking thinking. That's
I think that Julia says that one. That's just stinking thinking.
Yeah. Stuart, you're in a shame spiral, buddy.
Yeah.
Tell me something I don't know. It was a fun movie. I really enjoyed watching it again. I don't know when I'm going to watch it again in the future, but it's an interesting flick. So I encourage you, if you're adventurous, check it out. And check out the old Stuart Smalley sketches on SNL first, so you know what you're getting into if you're totally oblivious to the world of Stuart Smalley.
So I just want to also mention some of the other Harold Ramis films and how many of them so far we've covered. Because we start with Caddyshack, and I'm just talking about ones that he's directed. We haven't done National Lampoon's Vacation or Club Paradise, but of course we've done Groundhog Day, Stuart Saves His Family, Multiplicity. We haven't done Analyze This or Analyze That, or Bedazzled. The Ice Harvest would be an interesting one to do at some point.
Oh, wow. I forgot he did that.
Yeah. And then
Very
his
different.
final film was Year One, which I doubt we'll do.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, you talk about Analyze This. That would fit into our family theme. Ha ha.
Family.
Familia.
Yeah. But Dan, what are we doing next?
What we are doing next is a movie that was made in 2007, remade 2010. Originally British movie made by an American director. We're doing Death at a Funeral.
I
Frank
haven't
Oz.
seen either of them, and I'm so excited.
I haven't either, and
Oh, you haven't really? Okay.
No. I've seen parts of the British one, but for some reason I'm never able to sit and watch the whole thing. But I definitely want to try. I other than Peter Dinklage, I don't remember who Matthew McFadyen is in the
Matthew McFadyen is in the first one, the
British one.
original one,
The
which I'm
remake-
excited about. Tom
The remake is
Lomsgans.
like Martin Lawrence, Chris Rock.
Yeah, Chris Rock.
Luke
sounds right.
Wilson is in it.
Yeah, I'm excited to
Peter
watch both of
Dinklage.
them. Yeah.
Yes. So Death at a Funeral, that'll be our next episode. John, anything else you want to add or any more plugs?
I just want to say everyone should come check out our T Public store. Everything is in our link tree that's in this episode's description. We got some fun stuff on the store. I still have to make my DEA and Norris shirt. I gotta remember to do that. And send us an email, ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And, if there's anything that you have to say about Stuart Says Family or any other movie that we've talked about on the show or are about to talk about, if you want to have something to say about Death at a Funeral, we'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Dan, you got anything?
Nope, that's all I got for right now.
All right. Well, as you are headed home for Aunt Paula's funeral, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.
Walked out and my world caved in. I couldn't get back on my feet again. I tried self-help books, even meditation. Searched the want ads out of desperation.